Okay, this is chapter 3 of the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Written at Carnuntum, now Hainburg, Austria. 1. Part 1. It is not enough to watch the days we've already lived, pile up on one side, and those that remain melt away on the other. We must also consider that even if we were to live longer, it is not at all certain our minds would retain their ability to understand what is happening around us, or to grasp its significance, whether human or divine. Just because the mind begins to go, doesn't mean that breathing and eating are impaired, or that imagination, desire, and the like are inhibited. But without a mind, man is no longer able to be the master of himself, to understand exactly what is expected of him, to judge the evidence of his senses, to know when it's time to quit this life, or, in other words, to make any of those calculations that require an intellect in reasonably good working order. We must get on with our lives, then, not only because we are closing on death with each passing day, but because our mental capacities may desert us before death decides to take us. Part 2. We should also pause to consider how charming and graceful are the unexpected effects of nature's work. When bread is baking, for example, cracks appear in the crust. Although these would seem to confound the baker's design, they attract our attention and help to arouse our appetite. Figs, too, burst open just when they are best to eat, and olives left on the tree to rot achieve a most exquisite beauty. Similarly, the golden grain's drooping head, the lion's furrowed brow, the boar's foaming snout, and so many other details, if taken out of context, are not all that attractive, but when seen in their natural setting, they complete a picture and please the eye. In this way, the perceptive man, profoundly curious about the workings of nature, will take a peculiar pleasure in everything, even in the humble or ungainly parts that contribute to the making of the whole. The actual jaws of living beasts will delight him as much as their representations by artists and sculptors. With a discerning eye, he will warm to an old man's strength or an old woman's beauty, while admiring with cool detachment the seductive charms of youth. The world is full of wonders like these that will appeal only to those who study nature closely and develop a real affinity for her works. Part 3. After curing many illnesses, Hippocrates became ill himself and died. The Chaldean astrologers predicted the deaths of many before their own fatal hours struck. Alexander, Pompey, and Julius Caesar sacked and ruined countless cities and maimed and slaughtered untold thousands of soldiers and horses, and then they, too, departed this life. Heraclitus, after endless speculation on the destruction of the universe by fire, drowned in his own juices plastered with cow dung. Lice got the better of Democritus, and vermin of another sort killed Socrates. So what's the point of it all? Simply this. You embarked, you sailed, you landed, now disembark. If it is to start a new life, you will find the gods there too. If it is to lose all consciousness, you will be liberated from the tyranny of pleasure and pain, and from your bondage to an earthly shell that is vastly inferior to the master contained in it. For the spirit is intelligent and godlike, whereas the body is blood and dust. Part 4. Do not waste the rest of your life speculating about others in ways that are not to your mutual advantage. Think of all that might be accomplished in the time you throw away, distracted from the voice of your own true and reasonable self, wondering what the next man is up to and why, what he's saying or thinking or plotting. Purge your mind of all aimless and idle thoughts, especially those that pry into the affairs of others or wish them ill. Get in the habit of limiting yourself only to those thoughts that, if you are suddenly asked, "What are you thinking at this moment?" enable you to reply without equivocation or hesitation, "This or that." In this way, you show the world a simple and kindly man, a good neighbor, someone who is indifferent to sensual pleasures and luxuries and untouched by jealousy, envy, mistrust, or any other thought you would blush to admit. This sort of man, determined to be counted among the best in the pursuit of virtue, is a veritable priest and minister of the gods, especially the God that dwells within him and keeps him untainted by pleasure, unharmed by pain, safe from any wrong, innocent of all evil, a mighty warrior in the greatest warfare of all, the struggle against passion's dominion. With justice like marrow in his bones, he delights from the depths of his being in whatever happens, in whatever fate the gods allow. He never, except to achieve some great good on behalf of others, worries about what someone else might be saying, doing, or thinking. He minds his own business and keeps his gaze fixed on the pattern of his own destiny, making sure that he performs his work well, and believing that his fate is good, since it is subject to the universal good. He remembers his kinship with all rational beings, and never abandons his natural inclination to care for others. But he listens only to the opinions of those who live in conscious accord with nature. As for those who do not live in this way, he observes how they live and what sort of vile company they keep, day and night, at home and abroad. He attaches no importance whatsoever to the praise of these men, who can find no reason to praise themselves. Part 5. Do not act unwillingly, or selfishly, or impulsively, or tentatively. Do not dress your thought in too much fine talk. Be short in speech and restrained in action. Let the God who dwells within you command a manly man, a seasoned veteran, a statesman, a Roman, a leader who stands ready to give up his life when the retreat is sounded, without requiring an oath or looking around for witnesses. Show by a cheerful look that you don't need the help or comfort of others, standing up, not propped up. Part 6. If life offers you anything better than truth, justice, wisdom, and courage, or in other words, better than the peace that comes from acting in accord with reason, or in accord with destiny when events are outside your control, if, as I was saying, life offers you anything better than this, embrace it with your whole heart and enjoy it to the full. But if life offers you nothing better than your indwelling spirit, the same spirit that governs your emotions, guides your thoughts, tears you away, as Socrates used to say, from the titillation of the senses, obeys the gods and serves mankind. If, by comparison with this spirit, you find everything else trifling and base, then give not the slightest foothold to anything else. Nothing will sooner prevent your true spirit from flourishing, or be more difficult to root out, than the distraction of a divided loyalty. Nothing whatsoever. Neither popularity, nor wealth, nor power, nor the pleasures of the flesh, nor anything of the sort should compete in your affection for the good that flows from reason and neighborliness. Although, for a while, these inferior loves may seem quite compatible with an orderly life, they will soon overpower and destroy you. Simply and freely choose what is best, and never let go of it. But the best is whatever works to my advantage, you say. Then study your advantage carefully. If it's to the advantage of your reasonable self, seize hold of it. If it's merely to the advantage of your animal self, admit it, and don't try to pretend it's more than that. Only be sure of your judgment. Part 7. There is no present advantage in anything that may someday force you to break your word, or to lose respect for yourself, or to hate, suspect, or curse another, or to pretend to be other than what you are, or to lust after what you'd be ashamed to seek openly. The man who gives pride of place to reason and to his indwelling spirit, and remains the devoted servant of each, plays no parts, utters no complaints, and craves neither the wilderness nor the crowd. In fact, he lives without pursuing or fleeing anything at all. Knowing how much longer his soul will travel round in his body, whether for a short time or a long time, is of no interest to him. If the journey were suddenly to end, he would step out of his frame with the same dignity and simplicity that characterize all his actions. All his life, he has cared only about this, to take no detours from the high road of reason and social responsibility. Part 8. In the mind of a disciplined and pure man, you will find no sign of infection, no running sores, no wounds that haven't healed. It will not be this man's fate to quit life unfulfilled, like the actor who fails to complete his lines and walks off stage before the play is ended. What is more, there is nothing obsequious or conceited about him. He neither depends on others nor is afraid to ask for help. He answers to no man for who he is and for what he does, yet he hides nothing. Part 9. Treat with utmost respect your power of forming opinions, for this power alone guards you against making assumptions that are contrary to nature and judgments that overthrow the rule of reason. It enables you to learn from experience, to live in harmony with others, and to walk in the way of the gods. Part 10. Tossing aside everything else, hold fast to these few truths. We live only in the present, in this fleet-footed moment. The rest is lost and behind us, or ahead of us and may never be found. Little of life we know, little the plot of earth in which we dwell, little the memory of even the most famous who have lived. And this memory itself is preserved by generations of little men, who know little about themselves and far less about those who died long ago. Part 11. To these truths, add one more. Whenever you see or imagine something, make a precise mental picture of it, stripped to its bare essence and divorced from its surroundings. Call it by its proper name, and name each of the parts that compose it, and into which it will someday decompose. Nothing produces greatness of mind like the habit of examining methodically and honestly everything we encounter in this life, and of determining its place in the order of things, its intended use, its value to the whole universe, and its worth to man in his rule as citizen of that world city in which all other cities are but households. Ask yourself, What is causing the image or idea now forming in my brain? What elements compose it? How long will it last? What virtue does it require of me? Gentleness, for example, or courage, honesty, loyalty, simplicity, self-reliance, and so on. At each encounter like this, you must say, "This comes from God," or "This happened by sheer coincidence, through some chance combination of circumstance and some random blow of fortune," or "This is a man's doing, a brother or a neighbor who doesn't know how to act in accord with his true nature. But since I do possess this knowledge, I will treat him kindly and fairly as the law of my being demands, while bearing in mind that pleasure has no power to weaken or pain to harm me unless I let them. Part 12. If you pursue the matter at hand along the straight path of reason, advancing with intensity, vigor, and grace, and without being distracted along the way, if you keep your divine spirit pure and blameless, as though this were the moment to give it back, if expecting nothing and fearing nothing, you are content to act in accord with nature and to speak with heroic honesty, then you will live well, and no power on earth can stop you. Part 13. Just as surgeons always keep their scalpels and other instruments handy to provide emergency care on demand, so you should keep your principles with you at all times, ready to delve into anything human or divine, remembering, in even the most routine operation, how intimately the two are related. Indeed, no human action can be well taken without reference to the divine, nor the reverse. Part 14. Stop jumping off the track. You don't have time to reread your diaries, or the lives of the ancient Greeks and Romans, or the passages from their writings that you've collected for your old age. Throw off vain hope and sprint to the finish. If you care about yourself at all, come to your own aid while there's still time. Part 15. They fail to see all that it means to steal, to plant, to buy, to live in peace, to do what is right. To see all this requires an organ other than the eye. 16. Part 16. Body, soul, mind. The body for sensations, the soul for the impulse to act, the mind for guiding principles. Yet even the cattle in the field feel sensations. Even wild beasts, perverts, a Phalaris or a Nero, are attached on the puppet string of impulse. Even men who deny the existence of God, betray their country, and engage in shameful practices behind closed doors, possess minds to guide them. Having all this in common with the likes of these, there remains only one distinguishing mark of the good man: his love and delight in the thread of his own destiny, and his refusal to soil or upset with the orgy of sensations the divine spirit dwelling within him, where a serene peace reigns and God is obeyed, and no untrue words are spoken, and no unjust deeds performed. Even if everyone else questions his ability to live so simply, modestly, and happily, he doesn't let their doubt disturb him or divert him from the road leading to his life's destination, which he intends to reach pure and peaceful and prepared to take his leave in unforced allegiance to his fate. Okay. Cool. Some of those hit pretty hard. For me, at least. Particularly number one. So I had a grandma go through dementia recently, and I mean, that's a horrible state, right? You're not just like, Like if that happens to me, just off me right there. Like you're not dead, right? Your body isn't dead, but you're still existent there with your mind gone, unaware of your own name, unaware of others' names, unaware of what's happening. You're unable to understand events, time. You wake up 15 times a night because, hey, maybe you went to bed, you remember going to bed, and was that 5 seconds ago that you got in the bed? Was it 2 hours ago? Was that yesterday? You don't know, so you get up. You're confused, and you lose the ability to talk. You lose the ability to have joys above the simple pleasures, right? You smile at food and at sounds, and you smile like a baby because someone else smiles at you, but there's no memory. There's no existence. And if you're the person watching this, then it's, the person you loved your entire life is not there anymore, and they're just in front of you looking like themselves, but they grow mad and despondent and worried. They're always worried about something they see or something they hear, or they don't understand what's happening, so they're trying to hold on to that, and they're just like, what's going on? And you answer, and there's no sense from moment to moment that lasts. Like that is the worst death I can imagine. Right? I mean, it's not just you're tortured, but you're tortured and you don't even know you're being tortured. You're just in the middle of suffering for, as far as, you, the dementia patient, concerned, as far as it looks to me, forever and ever. Like you're in literal hell. Like you don't know how long it's been like this, that you're worried. It seems like it goes on without end. Right? And of course you don't know what's coming. You don't know you're losing your mind. And even if you do, you think, oh, I have it under control. I'm able to live here by myself. I'm able to exist. I go to the grocery store. Maybe I need a little bit of help. Maybe I get confused sometimes. I mean, people tell me I get confused, but I don't really remember that or focus on that. I just enjoy my life. And then slowly, it's just chip and chip and chip away at your identity, at your history, at your spirit acting in the world, at your mind, at your rational mind, which, Marcus Aurelius points out that humans are naturally rational. We have this ability to think. And when that's gone, we're just an animal. But it's worse than an animal, right? It's not like a dog or a cat or a rat. It's below that. Like you were once a man, and now, and you had that capability, you had that facility, you had that happiness, and these are people you recognize going on around you, but it's all shadows and shade. There's no truth to be found, and you'll never find truth again, and it's all lost and gone. And even if you don't understand that, there's some part of you which recognizes something is wrong, something is deeply, deeply wrong. And this feeling continues until you lose your mind to such a utter degree that you are a baby, for all intents and purposes, growing up backwards until you lose the ability of speech or hearing. And you're just a mouth without tongue or teeth. So when Aurelius talks of things like act as if every day was your last, I mean, we automatically think, oh, I got hit by a car, I get hit by a car tomorrow, I die tomorrow, suddenly, like that, snap of the fingers, a bit of pain and suffering, and oh my gosh, my back, and I'm gone. I got hit by a lightning bolt, I got shot with a gun, I drink poison, something happens and I'm a stroke, a heart attack, a few minutes, maybe a few hours sitting in a hospital, and that's it. It's a day. of pain and death, and it's over. And then maybe we think of the other sort of death, something like cancer, something like COVID, where you're coughing and you're coughing and you're coughing and you slowly grow weaker and weaker and weaker. You can't breathe and you can't breathe. Or there's something pressing on a part of your brain and you're losing the ability of speech. Or there's something growing in you and just it's metastasizing into your bones and you're in pain all the time because your nerve ends are fraying and every organ in your body is shutting down at the same time. Right? And that's a long, slow death, something like cancer. That lasts for years sometimes. But at least you're dying. At least you have time to say goodbye to your friends and family. You have time to think on what you want to leave behind. But it really feels that, or at least I felt, that with dementia that didn't happen. But like the time Grandma accepted that she had dementia, it was too late and she couldn't tell us any stories. She didn't want to meet old friends. She, all her high school buddies had died. And she was speaking German half the time. She can't, she's in a care home today and it's like she's not existent. Right? And it's that sense of death, a death that you don't even know is coming, but it also lasts forever, a death where you are chipped at and destroyed piece by piece, bit by bit. Right? Maybe I don't die tomorrow, but maybe tomorrow is the last moment I will be able to remember my grandkids. Maybe tomorrow is the last moment I will know the name of my brother or sister. Maybe tomorrow is the last time I'm able to recognize a picture of my mother. And I won't even know it. I won't even prepare for it. I would not expect. I would not be able to imagine because my mind at that point is already half gone and it's... Right? So I tend to think, if you died and you showed up at like the gates of heaven, what would your regrets be? Those are the worst things. That's the worst feelings in the world is, I should have done something. I should have acted here. And you always think you have more time. And if you die suddenly, or you die because of an illness that takes you over the course of 6 months, then, oops. I tried. I was working on it, but I was taken by events beyond my control. But when it's something like losing your mind, that may happen over the course of a decade. And there's always something more you're planning to do, you're working on it. But you don't quite get there because your mind is gone. That project you were going to do, you're going to build something here or learn the cello or learn Japanese or something, and you start on these projects halfway through the decade or whatever the case may be, the project isn't finished and you don't even remember the project and you're losing the ability, right? You're losing the ability to play the cello faster than you can relearn it. And it's all going backwards. So what do you have to rely upon? Your memories. I did something. I said something. I changed something in the world. Here's a bridge I built. Here's a person I helped. Here's a child I had. Here's a law I passed. Something of that nature. And I feel like that's what Aurelius is pointing out here with part 1. Right? Do something so that you can... As long as you're able to remember it, you can remember what you did with pride. You can take refuge before the gates of heaven or hell in the fact of that you did something. Not that you tried, not that you intended to, not that you wanted to, not that you were planning to, not that you were in the process of, but that you did something, you achieved something this day and this hour. And that achievement shall last forevermore. Or at least as long as I live. And even if it disappeared, even if I built a tower and my enemies knocked that tower down, then it stood for a second. It may have struck itself into the memory of some lad or lass walking by who said, oh, I wonder who built that tower, and my story gets passed on. Or, oh, they built a tower and they reached the sky. Maybe I want to build a tower one day, right? That's what Aurelius's sense means to me, is not just get along with your life and do, normal things with your life. And maybe you die suddenly because of a car crash, but, them's the breaks. That's life. It might end at any moment. But a living death, a zombie life, that's much worse. That's horrible beyond recompense, because you literally can't remember it. Okay. So 2, he talks about we should pause to consider how charming and graceful are the unexpected effects of nature's work, right? So he's talking about baking bread and so on, and things in their natural setting. But the way I tend to interpret that is looking at the minutia, right? I mean, I can look at a computer screen here. I can look at the bubble wrap. I can look at a chalk picture I made, and you can focus on it and you can see, there are complexities here I didn't even notice. There are beautiful possibilities. There are changes that I didn't put in place that now have happened to this picture. The way the dust settles across the screen, right? The way that the dust settles, and maybe it's pretty, but it is also a reminder of the passage of time, and that there's a joy to be found in the slow dedication of cleaning it with a wet rag and saying, oh, I have wiped away the passage of time. I brought the new life or new state or new prettiness to existence by taking the old and bringing it to the future. I can look at a piece of bread and say, not only did I make that bread, i.e. part 1, but also, well, why did the bread split this way? What's going on? It's scientific investigation. It's, I like the bread when it splits this way and versus when it splits that way. I like these flowers. I find these flowers, well, I didn't like them before, but now I like them again, once I look them in a different setting, in a different place, right? And that beautiful things can also be beautiful not just in themselves, but also because of their setting. A flower in a field, a wild flower in a field is different than a wild flower in a vase, you might say. Like, there's different meanings, there's different beauties that can be found there, different philosophical investigations. So it's basically saying, pay attention. And if you pay attention, then you will find that there is variety in everything. Okay, then 3, he's basically saying don't be afraid of life. Don't be afraid of death, because it's going to happen anyway. You can't avoid it. And the point is not the death, it's the life. He talks about if you start a new life, so this is interesting in section 3, because he's talking way back in, what would this be, 200 AD, something around there, about possibly different ways that we might live after death, or what happens after death, right? If you start a new life, the gods will be there too, and gods in this case are not like the Christian God or even but more like the Hindu God, right? More like natural forces. If you start a new life, then hey, the universe will also be there, like all of nature, all of divinity, all of truth and justice and the American way, right, is there in the new life just as much as in the old. But hey, maybe you die and you lose all consciousness and you're gone, a la, atheistic dark of night. There's nothing there, zip zilch nada, right? Hey, at least then you're not in pain. At least then you're not always dealing with these urges of pleasures and wants and needs, and you don't need to eat, you don't need to drink, you don't need to, oh my gosh, go to sleep, because like I need to go to sleep soon. I'm tired. Like, you're not tired. You're just gone. And hey, that's not so bad. You know, you should focus on the spirit. The spirit is intelligent and godlike, whereas the body is blood and dust. It's this spirit, it's this mind, it's this willing... okay, later on he talks about... yeah, in 16, the soul for the impulse to act. And that's not quite spirit, but it's what I would characterize as something in there, right? The actions you take are what are important, not the body you take those actions with. Because one lasts a whole lot longer than the other. Okay. 4, he's going on about do not waste the rest of your life speculating about others in ways that are not to your mutual advantage. Right? If you're always worrying about what others think, you're going to spend a lot of time doing nothing. You're going to spend a lot of time in your room thinking about, oh my gosh, someone's going to say this, or someone is going to say that, or they might think this, or they might think that about me, or they might have a problem with how I think or believe or feel. And you know, this is a very Stoic viewpoint, as in it's all about you. Stoicness, for all he talks about the civic virtues, right, and acting as a good citizen, but for the most part, Stoicism is about being yourself, focusing on yourself, bettering yourself. You can't control what others do. You can't direct them. You can't command them. You can gently push them, perhaps, but that's about the best you got. The only thing you can actually control and direct is yourself, is your own mind and how it exercises what it controls. You know, do your passions rule you, or does your mind rule you? Are you in balance or imbalance? And at the end of the day, what is the best action to take? The best action to take for Marcus Aurelius is to focus on yourself, to better yourself so that you want to better the world from the inside out, not from the outside in, is what Marcus Aurelius would say. Is how I interpret section 4. Now, section 5, do not act unwillingly or selfishly or impulsively or tentatively. Do not dress your thought in much fine talk. Be short in speech and restrained in action. Let the God who dwells within you command a manly man, a seasoned veteran, a statesman, a Roman, a leader who stands ready to give his life when the retreat is sounded, without requiring an oath or looking around for witnesses. Right? So that suggests to me, look, you die alone. It's you standing at the gates of wherever. It's you wandering into the abyss. It's you burning in the fire. It's you isekaiing yourself into a cow. Right? And any injury you do, any action you take which injures the spirit, right? Cowardliness, impulsiveness, is going to reflect most grievously upon you and your own soul, your own happiness, even in this life, even more than anything else. You know, what's the saying? Something like, you know, before you help others, help yourself. That's sort of the outlook. But also, we have 6 that follows that. You know, you may say, the best is whatever works to my advantage. And he says, then study your advantage carefully. Right? Don't act short-sightedly, impulsively, quickly. Don't be like, okay, you know what? I would like to have a lot of money. That would be very good for me. So I'm going to go rob a store. Well, then you get robbed. You rob the store. You live the high life for about 12 hours. Or 2 weeks, or 2 years, you know, maybe you're on a spree running around the city, or the county, or the country, robbing stores and living it up, and eventually you're going to get caught, right? The criminals who make it out fine are a very, 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 very small amount. But what are the odds? What is likely? What is rational to expect? They're going to get caught. And that high life of having a few $100s in your pocket, doing whatever you want, is going to end up with you in jail, or is going to end up with you broke, or is going to end up with you owing somebody money that you don't want to owe money to. Right? And so your advantage may appear in one sense to be acting in a certain way, but your advantage in another sense may be under the way entirely. Right? And to always be aware of this. Who are you voting for? What political actions do you speak up about? In work, are you kind or mean? Are you selfish or lazy? Are you patient? And if you are patient, is that rewarding you? Is that good for you? You could work. I had someone I worked with who, he worked for somebody else, extra hours all the time, giving 115%, I'd say, for years. And it was all in hope of, moving up. It was in the hope of getting a promotion. It was in the spirit of, I feel like people have helped me, so I need to help others. I'm doing my part. I'm doing the extra bit that I feel will be good for me. And then, the place got sold. My friend who did all this extra work got nothing for that extra work. No consideration, maybe a couple of kind words, but practically dropped like a hot potato. And so, hey, was it to his advantage to act in the way he did? Probably, possibly not. But who knows, right? Maybe he got a job because he knew somebody who he worked with that thought, oh, that guy's always been good. He's always given 110%, and he's out of a job now. So I see an opportunity to pick him up and give him something. Or was his patience and dedication ignored completely because he's part of a corporate environment and, he's maybe good at his job, but he's not good at kissing ass, or he's not the son of the right person, or, he's only been with the organization 5 years, but this other person's been with the organization 10 years. It doesn't matter how much you give, it's how long you've been there. It's tenure or history or something. Or, he wasn't friends with the right CEO at the right time, and when the CEO was way down in the bottom of the hierarchy and the other guy climbed, and so on. There's all sorts of ways this could go wrong. So which is it? Like, when you act, be careful about first viewpoints. Be careful about assuming things are to your advantage or not to your advantage. Look, helping an old lady cross the sidewalk, is it to your advantage to help the old lady cross the sidewalk? What does it cost you? What are the possible benefits? Right? If it costs you 30 seconds of your time and you're not going to be late to work, you're not going to miss the train, like, why not do it? Because what are the benefits? Hey, a smile. Hey, here's a old piece of candy. Maybe that was somebody's grandmother. Maybe you just feel better because you helped somebody else. Or maybe it turns out to be a practical effort. Maybe somebody saw you and then you're homeless 4 years later, and the guy who owns the donut shop comes out and says, you know what, I know you've always helped that old lady. I remember you helping that old lady every Tuesday, for like 6 months. And, you seem a good guy. I understand you're down in your luck. Let me help you. Or, hey, I've seen you before. I know you used to be, you're a drug addict or something, so I'm going to ignore you. Like, you don't know what the future brings. So you may be doing something that you think is to your advantage that is not. You may be doing something that is to your advantage you don't think is. Right? But, Aurelius here is a Stoic, and he's saying, be sure of your judgment, right? Don't blame someone else for a decision you made. Don't say, oh, I was going to be late to the train, so I couldn't ever help that old lady. I couldn't ever do an extra, 10% of my job on any day whatsoever because I did what they paid me for and not a tenth of a bit more work than that. Or, I know these people, my boss is always out to get me. And I'm gonna sabotage him by working badly today or something. Right? Or you may be like, hey, I'm working hard, and you're working hard for some guy who doesn't give a damn about you. You have to make the judgment, but it's your judgment. You are the person who decides whether this is to your advantage or not. You are the person who is ultimately responsible, and not just responsible, right? That's a newer way of thinking. Like, I'm responsible for my actions, but also Aurelius is pointing out you are responsible for your actions in the sense that you cause your actions, right? You have the single person who you have the most effect upon is yourself, is what he's pointing out. So you need to exercise that power diligently and wisely. This isn't to say that other things don't affect you, but the Stoic outlook is more along, it's less systemic problems and more individual problems, which, okay, Marcus Aurelius is an emperor. He is in top of the world, literally the most powerful man on the planet during the time he was writing this. The empires in China were having, if I remember correctly, during at least part of Aurelius's life, the empire, whatever Chinese empire was in charge at the time, was not doing so well, or it had split up or something. So like there's an argument to be made that there was a Chinese emperor that was also just as powerful as Marcus Aurelius, but that wasn't always the case during Aurelius's lifetime. At least for part of his lifetime, while he was writing this book, he was the most powerful man on the planet, bar none. So he's looking at this more in the sense of, I have ultimate power. Well, not ultimate power. He has the greatest power of any person he knows. And so if anyone's going to fix this, it's going to be him. No one else is going to fix the empire. No one else is going to keep it standing. No one else will have as much of an effect upon the world around him as he himself does. So there is some argument to be made for systemic problems, especially in the modern day. Like, a French peasant may very well go through life in a Stoic sense, and he may very well be happier because of this, believing that he should accept things as they come, that he's in charge of his life, or if not in charge, he is able to direct his life as best as anyone may. And he's not afraid of death, because people die every day and sickness happens every day. But today, when we don't expect to die every day, we don't see people pass all the time, we're not so used to that. Not so used to 50% of the city passing away in the course of 10 years because of a plague. Like routinely happened during the Roman Empire, that 50% of a city would disappear within a few years regularly, which makes our modern reaction to plague and illness somewhat understated, I feel, compared to the possible dangers. Okay. But again, so to finish off number 6, he's basically saying, what kind of life do you want to lead? Do you want to lead a life where you're always blaming others for your problems? And you can't help it, and you are a peon, you are a worm, you are nothing, you are dust beneath the machine. You are a cog which will be discarded as soon as you're broken, right? Or do you want to live a life where you believe, where you feel, where you know as much as anyone can know that you have at least some agency, some ability to be yourself and to move the world as you wish by moving yourself most of all, because no one can command you to think or believe what you think or believe. That is your decision. It is your actions that you take, and no one else. No one makes you do anything. There's at least some pride, some straight back to be found in that. Okay, so 7, there's no present advantage in anything that may someday force you to break your word or lose respect for yourself, or to hate, suspect, or curse another, or to pretend to be other than what you are, or to lust after what you be ashamed to seek openly. Basically, I interpret this to say, look, if you're doing something you're ashamed of, do you have any idea how much energy you spend hiding that? Like, do you have any idea how much that stunts your growth when you've got some idea in mind, or some person you like, or some criticism of a government or a boss or a bully or a system, and you hold back, you quiet yourself. You are fighting yourself literally at that point. You are directing your own inner energies toward yourself and shutting yourself down and making yourself less than what you could have been. Remember, Aurelius is a Stoic. He's not afraid of pain or death or failure. He's afraid, if he is afraid of anything, of his own hatred towards himself. Right? His own self-disgust is what he dislikes most of all. Now, there, of course, is the opposite viewpoint, right? Hey, if I'm starving and I'm about to die, or if I have a kid or I have a cat that I'm homeless and I have a dog I have to take care of, then I will, debase myself. I'm like, I'll lick your shoe if you give me food, because otherwise I'm going to die today. Or, I'll cut off my arm if that saves the life of my cat, sort of thing. And one way to look at that is you are debasing yourself for someone else. I mean, is it really worth licking this guy's shoe for a piece of bread? But another way is, it's my decision, right? It's my choice. And being forced to lick a guy's shoe for a piece of bread, or being forced to cut off my arm, are very different things than choosing to make that sacrifice. Right? It's all in like how you feel. Like, what will you feel 10 years later? If you lose your arm in an industrial accident, that sucks. If you lose your arm because you walked into the battlefield and picked up a wounded soldier and dragged him back, then you are proud of that. And you can live with losing your arm because of that, as opposed to random chance. Right? Aurelius, as a Stoic, is not a fan of random chance. Do not blame random chance, because that just ends horribly. That ends with you feeling like a victim. That ends with you going, my life sucks. There's nothing I can do about it. Why am I even here? And Aurelius says, no, the answer is, you are here, and what are you going to do about it? Okay, in number 8, in the mind of a disciplined and pure man, you will find no sign of infection, no running sores, no wounds that haven't healed. It will not be this man's fate to quit life unfulfilled. Right? So in 8, he's saying this is better for your mental health. And straight up, I mean, if we take it into the modern language of today, he's saying, look, if you are disciplined and you are pure, if you don't hide things, if you tell the truth, if you are honest, if you know 100% that you have done your best, then that helps your mental health. And that's how you live a happier, more successful life. I'm not going and saying I don't want to kill myself sort of manner. And importantly, remember, this is the most powerful man on the planet, bar none. Right? He answered, he neither depends on others nor is afraid to ask for help. Right? He isn't so prideful as to not ask people for help. When he needs assistance, he's saying, go and ask for it. You have nothing to hide. You have nothing to be ashamed of, right? Because if you're not hiding anything, nothing to be ashamed of. If you're weak, well, you're also strong in another way, right? You are have full confidence in yourself because you are doing the best you can. You are exercising your intellect. You are not controlled. You aren't sitting there in front of a entire pizza or an entire chocolate cake crying because you've broken your diet and you're just so weak and pathetic. You aren't sitting there at a bar thinking, I should have asked that gal out on a date because I'm so stupid and cowardly, right? You aren't thinking, well, I really should have, said yes to that job opportunity, but I was afraid of it, and I'm just going to live my life a little peon. I mean, I should have grabbed it. I should have done something. I had an idea. I could have been somebody, but instead I chose to be nothing. He's like, don't do that, right? That sucks. That is a sucky, terrible life to live, a terrible way to feel. So act without shame. Act with pride. Act without vanity. Act in honesty. Because what have you got to lose, right? That's the old statement I think applies here. Your greatest enemy is yourself, or who's going to hurt you more than you were going to hurt yourself? Right? You had a bad parent, and they did terrible things. It's one thing to let that event or that history rule you. It's another thing to decide for yourself that you will not let the events of your past rule you or decide who you are and what you believe and how you feel and how you act. Right? You won't let society, you won't let other people, you won't let anyone else tell you who you are and who you want to be. And if you achieve that, you may not be happy, but you will at least have avoided the worst possible outcome, which is hating yourself. You will not hate yourself. Avoid that at all costs, is the interpretation I take from here, right? And if you need to ask for help, because you don't want to end up 10 years later going, damn, I should have asked for help. Okay, 9. Treat with utmost respect your power of forming opinions. For this power alone guards you against making assumptions that are contrary to nature and judgments that overthrow the rule of reason. You do not have to do what someone tells you to do. You do not have to believe what someone tells you to believe. It is you and you alone who is the rational being at the center of the universe, who dies alone and exists for himself or herself or itself or themself or whatever you want to call your spirit. And it's the spirit that is important, not the body, right? This is existentialist almost, right? You decide what you believe and what you act and what you will. You decide whether you are strong or weak. It's not somebody else that does this. It's not the drugs that decide for you. It is you, yourself. It is personal responsibility to a horrific level. Because you cannot control the world. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. And if you can't control how you react to it, then your life is going to suck, right? You are going to be blown hither and thither at the whimsy of the winds of fate. And maybe you're lucky. Maybe you're the one in a billion who wins the lottery and runs into the love of your life on the side of a road, changing a tire, and happens upon the treasures of Babylon on a summer jaunt, and whose name is immortalized forever. That's not gonna be me, right? I have to work for what I want. I have to move in the direction I want to be. I have to achieve what I want to achieve, because it's not going to happen to me. And maybe some people it appears to. Maybe some people you think it will. But the vast majority of folk, it's not. Even Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the Roman Empire, single ruler of the Roman Empire, cannot make everything he wants to happen. Right? You see this in the difference between, let's say, billionaires who do their own thing, live their own lives, get involved in their own projects, versus billionaires who are always in the news, trying to change politics, trying to move the world, trying to shift it around, right? Which group do you think is happier? Which group do you think is more stable mentally and spiritually? The ones who are able to act as they will. The ones who trust their judgment and don't blame others for their failures or successes, right? The American ideal, I suppose, is the self-made man, the person who comes from nothing or comes from very little, and by dint of his own hard work achieves something. And then it may rest upon his laurels after that. But you have to achieve something first. You can't simply be a housewife stuck in a rut and completely economically dependent upon the whims of someone else, right? You want to be the type of person, or at least Aurelius says, who is responsible for themselves. And in order to be responsible for yourself, you have to, he thinks, accept that you decide. It is your rational mind. Again, it's not your emotions, not your luck, it's not the world. It is you and the way you logic things out. Hey, maybe you're wrong, but at least it's you that is wrong and not the world that has wronged you. And hey, maybe you're right. I mean, that's the whole other side of it. We're human beings, we're rational, and we have gotten to a hell of a nice spot as regards the mammals of the planet, right? And we've done this by following our rationality. So maybe we've hit on something here. Don't act like a monkey, act like a human being. And don't believe yourself a monkey when you are a human being. You know, right? That's one thing about evolution that is often sort of gotten or understood wrong. Like, we evolved from monkeys in a way, but also monkeys evolved from monkeys. You know, the orangutan and the chimpanzee today are as highly evolved as we are. You know, we have a common ancestor. We just evolved in different directions. So for Marcus Aurelius, humans evolved in the direction of having a really big rational brain. And when I say, you know, don't act like a monkey, don't believe yourself to be a monkey, I mean, don't believe yourself to be that thing that you are not. You know, don't believe yourself to be the monkey that is your cousin. Don't believe yourself to be the monkey that is your ancestor from 2,000 years ago. You are a human being, and more importantly, you are you, right? You aren't your brother or your sister or a politician or a philosopher even, right? You are the person you are indelibly, unalterably, except by yourself. Like, as long as you have a mind, as long as you're alive, you are the person with the most influence over yourself, bar none. And if someone else you feel has influence over you, if someone else tells you who you are and what you believe and how you should feel or act, then that is only because you are letting them do that. Unless, of course, you know, they're literally a prison guard tasering you and by force. But then again, that's the pain, and that's the body, and that's the vagaries of fate. Like, what's really important? As you're lying there dead on the field with a spear through your stomach, what are you thinking of? You're thinking of happy times? You know, back when I was a kid, oh my gosh, I miss my mom. You're thinking of what you just did, like, oh my god, it's in so much pain, right? But at least I saved Carl, you know? Or you're asking, did we do it? Did we beat the Nazis? You know? Or you're thinking, oh, well, this is it. I'm dead. Do I regret my life? Do I regret my actions? No, I came here and I'm proud of what I've done and who I am. Like, how do you want to die? This is the Stoic outlook here. It's how do you want to die and how do you want to live are the same question. You know, so part 10, tossing everything aside, hold fast to these few truths, we live only in the present in this fleet-footed moment. The rest is lost and behind us, or ahead of us and may never be found. You know, everything you do is almost certainly going to be forgotten. Your name, your actions, you know, where you went on campaign, how much money you made, that's gone. That's nothing. Nobody remembers that. Maybe if you are Caesar, they might remember a few things, but even now, how much do we know about Caesar's daily life? How much do we know about his inner thoughts? How much do we know about how he felt adopting Augustus? You know, how he really reacted to Cleopatra. We don't know these things just by hearsay, and 2,000 more years from now, some of that's going to be forgotten, right? Some of it's not going to be remembered, and except maybe by some few historians, but the common person, the regular man on the street, the regular kid learning in her school is going to have 2,000 more years of history to remember, and Caesar becomes but a footnote. So the question is, how do you live with that? You know, not just with the fact of dying, but the fact of being forgotten. Okay, so 11. Nothing produces greatness of mind like the habit of examining methodically and honestly everything we encounter in this life, and of determining its place in the order of things, its intended use, and so on and so on. Right? So he's basically saying, do some science. Not necessarily the scientific method, but science is in observe carefully, figure out how things work. Don't just take someone's word for it. Don't simplify a whole system into, I don't know, capitalism or communism or religion or anarchy or us against them or male and female or, you know, good and bad. There are gray areas in the world. There are shades of gray everywhere. There is a spectrum in autism, for example, right? From the can't speak, can't talk, can't walk, to the little odd sometimes in social situations. It's sensitive to sound. You know, there's this big complexity in life and existence. And if you're always trying to simplify things, you will inevitably lose the sense of true power and the true state, and you'll end up making mistakes. You know, ask yourself, what is causing the image or idea now forming in my brain? What elements compose it? How long will it last? If you believe something, you know, whether it's politics or religion or how you should act or who a certain person is, well, ask yourself, why do I think that? Why do I believe that? Why do I act the way I do sometimes? You know, what has caused me to think this or believe this? What is the history? Am I likely to still think this is important or urgent 5 or 10 or 15 years from now? You know, he's saying live in the moment, yes, but at the same time, not be aware of the past and the future. This isn't being in the moment as in a Buddhist outlook, I would say. This isn't Zen-like, experience everything as it comes in clear-headedly. No, this is experience everything in the moment and do not let yourself be distracted in that moment by outside forces. Is there a problem in your country? Is there a problem in your job? Is there an opportunity in something you could do? Is there someone who needs your help and you're ambivalent about it? You know, you're going back and forth. You're going, oh, maybe I should do this, maybe that, and oh gosh. And well, I mean, I only have some of the information, and well, I mean, this guy says that thing, but this gal says the other thing, and you end up doing nothing, or you end up saying, oh, I saw that on TikTok, and you never question it. You never ask who paid for that information to be there, what algorithm directed it to you. You know, is there a proof behind it? Is that does someone have an agenda by saying this? Is this the entire truth? Right? I mean, if you're looking at even just a YouTube video on particle physics, you aren't going to get all of particle physics in 20 minutes. There's going to be complexities and mysteries that are smoothed over in a single poster view of the standard model, let's say. Right? So don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed by the moment. At the same time, accept that this moment is all you have. This is the best you've got. So act fairly and competently as best you can without becoming overwhelmed by the past and the futures and the maybes and the could have beens. Who are you now today? What do you wish to do today? What is the truth that holds true today? And can you rely upon that view? Where are you making your mistakes? Carefully decide this. While also remembering at the same time that, hey, I could die tomorrow. So, do the best you can. And then he has this, I want to say, advice, ask, what virtue does it require of me? Greatness, courage, honesty, loyalty, simplicity, self-reliance, and so on, right? Does an action of, if I'm getting into a situation, right, am I better off if I'm cowardly? Am I better off if I'm courageous, right? If someone is asking me to do something, are they asking me to hate or to love? Are they asking me to build something up or tear something down? And he's a Stoic, yes, but you also have the old Aristotelian virtues, and the Platonic virtues, and as well. I mean, today you might have the Christian virtues, or in Buddhism, they might have the Four Noble Thoughts, I think it is, or following the Eightfold Path, something like that. And so ask yourself, does this require a sin of me or a virtue of me? Right? When someone tells me to do something, when someone orders me to act, am I quieting my own mind? Am I shutting myself off? Am I saying, I don't think, just act, it's my duty? Or am I saying, well, is this the best thing? Is this good? Do I feel pride about this? In 10 years from now, on my deathbed, or if I die doing this, am I going to go, damn, I was a coward? Or am I going to go, I was brave? Right? Take pride in yourself. Which is the part of part 12 here, right? If you pursue the matter at hand along the straight path of reason, advancing with intensity, vigor, grace, and without being distracted along the way, if you keep your divine spirit pure and blameless, as though this were the moment to give it back, if expecting nothing and fearing nothing, you are content to act in accord with nature and to speak with heroic honesty, then you will live well, and no power on earth can stop you. So that's a question. Will you live well? What does living well mean? And remember, he's a Stoic, as I say again. So he's looking at this and he's saying, hey, if living well to you means food and shelter and lots of books and warm housing and the pleasures of cake and smoke, then go ahead, do that. Like, if you think that is to your advantage, if you think that is for the best, right? If you are happy and proud of living that way, go ahead and do it. If you are not, don't do it, right? And for Marcus Aurelius, at least, he's saying honesty is the best policy. Act as if you were going to die tomorrow. This is how he feels one should act in order to live a life well, in order to live a life which is, if not happy, at least not sad, not recriminating over failures. Again, this is just, it's the Meditations. Right? He is writing to himself. He is giving advice to himself. This isn't a book for others. Isn't a book to tell you what to do. This is a book where he is telling himself who he is and what he wants to believe himself to be, or what he wishes to become. And if you agree with the way he lives his life, and you think that speaks to you and tells you some sort of truth, or it helps you deal with the vagaries of fate, it helps you deal with the earthquakes and the death and the pains and losing of jobs and the constant worry about rent, then perhaps he has some good advice. If you think that his advice does not help you, well, then this book isn't for you, right? Not all philosophies have to be for you. That's the whole point. Find your own way. And he thinks there are paths, natural paths, rational paths, human paths that lead to a good life. But you may argue differently. He just says, or suggests, right? Argue differently in a rational manner. Don't argue from emotions. Don't argue because you're thinking short-sightedly. Don't go, well, obviously food is better because you're starving right now. Go, obviously food is better because you have thought about what life is like without food, because you've experienced starving or famine and said life is something that you need food to have as a base minimum, is one of the basic requirements. And there is a rational reason for believing that. I can make an argument, not simply I want, or I feel, or I believe, or I thought, or I read it in a book, or someone told me once, right? Make an argument, decide, is what he's saying. And I think that a great many people understand that point of view, right? Like, I may disagree with you, but I'm going to feel very differently about disagreeing with you if you can at least give me reasons for why you act or believe in a certain way. As opposed to if you're standing up there saying like, well, it's a sin because the Bible says, I'm like, I'm going to need more than that, right? Or if you're standing up there and saying, well, all people are born equal, so obviously they must be equal in every way and there should be no inequality whatsoever. I'm going, well, why is that, right? I can say that is also a possible problem. What does that do to the economy? What does that do to the meritocratic system? Shouldn't people who are harder working deserve more? I can make these arguments, and then you make your arguments, and we go back and forth. Well, we each argue and rationalize about how we want to live, our lives. We don't hit each other over the head with clubs simply because we disagree. We hit each other with clubs because we're in a life or death battle that we've done our best to avoid, sort of bit. This is old-timey Roman fighting barbarians land. And we have a tendency to look at some of these philosophies in a gentler view, I feel, or with a eye which is colored by modern ethics. And the fact is, it is not modern ethics. There is an undercurrent here of blood and death, and he talks about dying because he expects to die. He goes into battle knowing full well that some Gallic tribeman could turn up behind him at any time and cut off his head. He's seen folk die. He's lost, what did he lose, like 4, 5 of his children passed away. So he's learning how to deal with this. He's the most powerful man in the world, and he still can't save his own children. He still can't guard the empire against all faults. He still has to deal with rebellions. He still has to deal with greedy taxmen. He can't fix all of it no matter what he does. And how does he deal with that? How does he live with that? How does he keep going and working without giving up? That's what he's trying to do here in the Meditations. That's the sort of light world he lives in. It's not a gentle world, not in any way. Okay, so 13. Okay, no, he says, no human action can be well taken without reference to the divine, nor the reverse. No human action can be well taken without reference to the divine, nor the reverse. So the divine here, is nature, is virtue. Zeus, the father and the protector and the leader and the creator and all these things. Also the infelodious, horrid goat man, perhaps. And Hera is at once perceived in the modern times as, jealous, and also she's a goddess of marriage. It's kind of her job to keep Zeus in the straight and narrow, And at the center of all this is humanity. He lives in a time with the Roman gods where there's ancestor worship as well. And there's Christianity is rising. It's an idea. It's being persecuted at the time. But it's a world where the divine is more close to us and yet farther away. He talks about the God in you here. That divine spark, we might say today, using the Abrahamic religion, that divine spark, which is the source of the fire of the soul, right? The breath of life that we received, and so on. And it's this same sense, it's with the same idea that I feel Marcus is trying to speak. He's saying, if we are nothing without nature and virtue and God, and God is nothing without us, nature and virtue, and man. He's not equal to the gods in this sense, not equal to the divine, but also not less than the divine, right? There's some part of human beings which is rational and natural and linked indelibly with the form and structure and patterns of the universe itself. Right? He's saying, there are complexities, and there are two sides to every equation. There are two sides to every coin in action. If I can see you, you can see me. If God can affect us, I can affect God, sort of thing. I mean, back in the time, they may have done it with sacrifices, heading up to Mount Olympus. But the same idea might work today in all sorts of, in the Abrahamic religions. If you can speak to God, then maybe you can change his mind. Maybe there's something to be learned here. Maybe we are becoming one with the universe, and all things are good, as was it Leibniz, I want to say, would have argued. There is no evil. It's just a mistake we made. That's not actually evil. Isn't actually happening. Or that's I always get Leibniz and Spinoza confused here on that bit. One of them was a monads, and the other one is everything's good and logical. If I remember correctly, it's been a while. I should look back at those. Right? But in something like Shintoism, of some sort of shamanism, and you help the mountain helps you. You are responsible for caring for the mountain. You don't want to make the kami angry, that you can calm them down. In Hinduism, maybe you're becoming one with Brahman. And Brahman is also sort of you in a way. Or Buddhism, where the ego is an illusion, and who knows what comes after that once we all become bodhisattvas and the world dissipates like a soap bubble. Or it could just be in a regular, normal, non-religious sort of pseudo-spiritual outlook, right? We are a part of the world, and the world is a part of us, and there's give and take, and for every action there's a reaction, and we don't really know exactly what's happening, but we know we're a part of it. We know that we have a place in the world. And if we have a place in the world, by definition, we are part of the world, right? We aren't separate. We are not unnatural beings. We are rational. And in that rationality, we express our natural form. So he's saying, don't ignore that. Don't denigrate yourself, saying, I am only a human being, and I'm stupid and dumb, and I can't understand the mind of God. Look, You are you. You are existent. You are a person. You are a spark of the divine. You know, you were put here on earth for a reason, sort of viewpoint. And if you weren't put here on earth for a reason and it's all atheism and you're all going to pass into the shadows of the universe that disappears as the spaces between atoms become too large and the entire space-time extravaganza, all those fields of electromagnetism just pop into nothingness or become a new Big Bang with no record of the old, who knows? Sort of bit. Well, then at least you were here and you existed and you were happy for a while. Right? And you can't ask for more than that. Right? You don't look at the world with despair. Look at it with sort of one step short of resignation. It's more like resignation with Aurelian characteristics, we'll say. Or I might, a Viking outlook, you know, joy even in failure, joy at the attempt, and so on. Right? 15, to see all this requires an organ other than the eye. Or, okay, sorry, go back, 14. So 14, 15 at the same time, right? Stop jumping off the track. You don't have time to reread your diaries. Act now. You may not be able to go back. You know, I am 100% guilty of this. I have all sorts of books and ideas here that I've written down. I have literal buckets full of philosophy notes that I'm going to get to someday. And Marcus Aurelius would look at me and go, slap me across the face and go, get to work. Get to work right now because you're not going to be around for forever. And when you are, you know, sitting on your deathbed or you were hit by a car, you were going, you have dementia, or you were 75 and you can't even read your own handwriting because it was all in cursive back then. You're going to regret not acting now. You know, I played a video game today for like 20 minutes. Aurelius has a very harsh outlook on that, right? Why are you playing a video game? You're not going to remember. I don't even remember what the video game, what was like Mega Man 6 or something. Like, he's like, are you going to remember that in 10 years? Are you going to be proud of that you played Mega Man 6 for 20 minutes a day? You didn't even finish it? He's like, is that how you want to live your life? And I mean, it's a tough, harsh, demanding outlook. That this is the last moment I have on Earth, and what do I want to do with it? How do I choose to live? I mean, I think there's another side to that too. You have to rest. I gotta sleep sometime. I mean, I've been talking to this camera for an hour, but I gotta stop. I don't want to go to number 4. You know, I could go to chapter 4 and 5 and keep going for another 3, 4, 5 hours. My voice is gone. I won't get to sleep right. And you know, that causes problems that cascade and cascade and cascade. So, hey, I take 20 minutes out to play a game. Or, you know, I hurt my back and I work on Final Fantasy 12 for 6 hours that one day. That's not a bad thing. And I can say that with pride and assurance in my own actions and beliefs, because, you know, I've rationally gone with, sometimes you got to rest. You know, maybe I haven't gotten to all the notes, but I am making the notes, and that's something. You know, I may not be all I could possibly achieve, but if I study those notes, I might not write down a note that I could have written down today because I was reading something else. You know? So it's all about how do you want to live your life, and what do you think is best for you to do? What is to your advantage? Use your rationality, decide, and don't do it immediately. Make arguments. Look at the facts. Try some science. You know, what is it? In Seinfeld, there was a system or there was an episode in which George was doing the opposite of everything his instincts told him to do, and it turned out, hey, that was a system. And eventually he stopped doing that for, I don't remember what reason. But, hey, try something different, maybe. Try waking up early for 2 weeks. See if that does anything. Make some scientific experiments. You know? Maybe go on a trip. If you can't think of what to do, go on a trip. Maybe try the different job and get into a hobby. You know? Hey, maybe if you're just feeling down, just sit in front of a TV and go watch something from your childhood. Go watch Pokemon or the Addams Family that you loved, and reinvigorate your spirit. And maybe that's what you need, right? Just laze in front of the TV. Or maybe you've lazed in front of the TV too long and you need to go out and see sunlight, touch grass. It's all about who are you, what do you want to decide? It's up to you. And it's hard, it's difficult, but if you are ruled by your emotions, then you are not expressing yourself naturally in the furthest way. You are not exercising rationality. You're not being a human. You are being a slug. And there's a very different sense you have of yourself, I think. When you're being a slug because you're in pain or you need to rest or you just want to reward yourself for playing a game, versus being a slug and sitting there in the dark, being depressed, thinking, I should have the energy to do something, but I can't. Aurelius says, you have the energy. You make the energy. You push yourself until you have the energy, because the other possibility is nothingness forever. Just a slug. And that drive to do one thing, get up and put one piece of clothing away. If you're depressed, get up and walk outside, walk around the block once, and next week walk around the block twice. Next week walk around the block 3 times. These small steps sometimes are what you need, and no one can make you do them except you yourself. So 16, water. Body, soul, mind. The body for sensations, the soul for the impulse to act, the mind for guiding principles. Right? But hey, cattle in the field, the cows and the sheep and the chicken, they have bodies. Wild beast, perverts, a Phalaris, whatever that is, Nero, it was a Roman emperor, famous for throwing debauched parties and fiddling "Oh Rome Burned," and I think he the one who would act in a play with himself as the main lead and everyone would have to clap? Or did he do music? It was something of that nature. Gladiator fights? Perhaps. Right? But these are wild beasts, and Nero are just like, I want, I get. There's no thought process between the impulse to need something and the action to take it. Right? And he goes on, even men who deny the existence of God, betray their country, and engage in shameful practices behind closed doors, possess minds to guide them. Right? All the human beings also have minds, and the people who you think act stupid or dumb, the ones who make mistakes, the ones who decide to take horrible, terrible actions and kill and maim and murder and harm, they also have minds. They also decide to do something, and they may decide for reasons we think are evil and have bad effects eventually and only harm themselves, but they have their reasonings, maybe bad reasoning, but it's there. Of course, they might say the same about us, which is always a conundrum, moral conundrum. And that's one of the reasons why the Stoics, or the Greeks really, tried to base our ethics in rationality. Because if they could agree that something was bad, then they could say, "Hey, well, that's bad because if you follow the natural laws of your rationality, it leads you to decide that thing is bad." Right? It wasn't because the book said it was bad or the law says it was bad. It was because it was intrinsically in the human capabilities of existence, and exercising those capabilities led you to a moral system and a moral state, right? What is it? The idea, God is in a grain of a grain of wheat, and heaven in a single flower puddle. I may be misquoting that. right? The idea, natural law is everywhere and you follow it and that's how you become happy. So the whole claim that Aurelius is saying of, well, do what I tell you to do, right? Follow this idea, be responsible for yourself, don't hold back, be honest, be open, be true, be steadfast, leads to a happy life or a better life, a well-lived life, a life to be proud of. And he's saying this is rational. Figure it out for yourself. And if you disagree with me, prove it, right? At least have a good argument. But I think, says Aurelius, that I am not easily defeated. I think that you do not have a great argument for being dishonest in all your dealings with all people, for example. I don't think you have a great argument in being cowardly, or I don't think you have a great argument in always being a slave to your desires, so on. Okay. But so back to 16, he says body, mind, soul, that's what makes us up. But body, also beasts have those, beasts and, people who act like beasts have souls as well. And people who act like evil folk, or sometimes beasts, have minds that are somewhat rational. But what makes us different, right? Having all this in common with the likes of these, we ourselves are human, and humans have done some terrible things. There remains only one distinguishing mark of the good man, his love and delight in the thread of his own destiny, and his refusal to soil or upset with an orgy of sensations the divine spirit dwelling within him, where a serene peace reigns and God is obeyed, and no untrue words are spoken, and no unjust deeds performed. Right? Even if everyone else questions his ability to live so simply, modestly, and happily, he doesn't let their doubts disturb him or divert him from the road leading to his life's destination, which he intends to reach pure and peaceful and prepared to take his leave in unforced allegiance to his fate. So you don't know what's going to happen when you die. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But all sorts of people are going to tell you what you should do and how you should believe and how you should act and what is the best way for you to be. And Marcus Aurelius says, that's nice, but it's you that decides. It is you ultimately who makes the decision how to act, how to live your life. And don't worry about people who do not understand that you are happy. Don't worry about people who don't understand that choosing who you are and what you are and why you are allows you to live a fulfilling life. Because if you do that, if you live a fulfilling life, then it will be a better life. And if you let others rule you, then it will be a worse life. This is the centerpiece, right? Life is horrible, or will be horrible, or might be horrible, who knows? But we can at least direct some minor parts of the vast organism of all the universe by being ourselves and being rational and being proud and honest and open and direct and not giving up no matter what happens. And that's book 3. Thank you.